Hello, 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 beautiful people out there. So here we go, A's to your burning cues. Recently, I put out a message in our gorgeous Agents of Awesome community and also through my newsletter, asking you guys, my incredible tribe, what your burning questions are, and if we were to have a one-to-one conversation, what are the types of things that you would love to be talking about, and what would you like to know? So my goodness, didn't you send in a flurry of amazing questions? They were so incredibly diverse and deep and rich and wow. So then I was stuck with the problem. How do I get back to everyone on this? And so I thought the most efficient way is going to be doing it this way on video. So I took the time to collate all of these questions that came through, break them into some of the main areas, the main topics, and then select within those some of the questions that that really shone out. And of course, get rid of any of the repetitions. So let's jump right in. This could be a rather long video, and we'll just see how we go. I wish I had the capability to see your lifetime comments, because I know there's going to be some cool things there. I can't figure that out at this point in time. So hello to all of you joining live. Thank you. Let me know where you're joining in from. Shoot comments along the way. I promise I'm going to get back to them at some point. So here we go. You can check out the question list as well. It's posted there to see where we're at in the dialogue. So a big area that came through was around relationships, soulmates, and soul contracts. So the first question here, what do you know about prior to getting here or back here contracts? And what reading would you recommend on it? So this person and I come back every time we're here in this lifetime. Excuse me for referring to my notes as well. Like I said, there was just so much there, so I'm going to have to keep going back because I want to give you guys substance in the responses too. So past lives, reincarnation. Look, there's some fascinating studies that have been done with children in this area, kids who report their past lives in detail. And many of those have then, there was one particular researcher who went back and verified these stories, tested them, and they were accepted to be true by the families of, or the community, that the person who had died, and this kid said that they were, the people that used to live with them would acknowledge that child as a true reincarnation of, and verify the story that that child was saying in terms of all of the details of who the past person was. And interestingly, in those cases of the kids, often their lives of past life ended suddenly or tragically, like a murder or something like that. And some of these children would even have birthmarks on the places where that injury was said to have happened. Isn't that interesting? And there are also some studies that are out there about comparisons done with characters in time where they even look really similar, and that those two people, they led similar lives. Maybe someone thought they were the reincarnation of that previous person. They were similar in character. They had similar life themes that emerged. And it was almost as if that person in the second life was continuing some of the incomplete tasks of the person beforehand. So, that idea of continuation through. And of course, Tibet has a long tradition of supporting this idea that certain spiritual beings or spirit can move from one life into the next. As the Dalai Lama calls it, it's like changing clothes. And here I'm referring particularly to the traditions of the Dalai and the Panchen Lamas, who are considered incarnations in their cultural tradition from one generation to the next. So if you're interested in that topic, aside from reincarnation, you might also like to look into soul contracts. And this is the idea that we meet up again and again with certain people because we have some kind of shared destiny or lesson to work through together. Some studies talk about this being true within extended families also, so that certain souls reincarnate within a particular family group. So where is the truth in that? Look, you'll hear this from me time and time again, that you have to feel into the truth of this for yourself, and you have to make your own and use your own discernment as you navigate. Next question. I'm in a relationship to someone who's very different from me. How do I find what I feel is somewhat lost? So this is really common. I hear this a lot with people on a path of awakening, where they've had big spiritual experiences and they feel themselves, who they are now, to be quite different to who they were when they entered that relationship. And of course, there's family dynamics too, and the relationships that we have with certain family members or friends beforehand. So this question is really asking, though, about, connecting with what feels lost, connecting with ourselves, connecting with you. So my suggestion here is simply to do the things that you love, to make you happy, that create joy for you. Get in touch with that essence that is you, particularly when we are in relationships for a long time, and especially if we start them very young. We can merge our identities, which is a beautiful thing. And sometimes we can lose a sense of who we are within all of that. Once you get involved with children and all the rest too, we can lose ourselves in the process. So when we want to reconnect with ourselves, one of the quickest, easiest ways is to reconnect with that which gives us peace and joy. If that seems like a long distant memory, go back to times in childhood, times in your life where you were doing things that you could do all day long, where time passed, you weren't even aware of it, where you were just in your flow and in your element. And then now in the present day, reconnect with that, because that can really strengthen and tap into our innate core. And from there, the more that we spend time in that and grow that and nourish that and allow ourselves the space and time for it, then we can get further connected with, what are my needs now in this moment? What do I want to be doing? What gives me joy now? And to naturally flow from there. So here's a beautiful one about relationships and kundalini. So someone says, I had a kundalini awakening that was activated by some dreams that opened my heart chakra. On one hand, this was the most beautiful, blissful thing that ever happened, but also the most chaotic, painful thing that has ever happened to me. The dreams in this person's case are related to a man who is not her husband. So that created a whole heap of confusion about what is this connection. For a long time, I denied it. I thought I was going insane, and it was a very scary time. I feel there are emotions that are not mine, and there is an energy flowing between us most of the time. In my heart, I feel this connection is very significant, whether it is a twin flame, twin soul, a divine partner, or just my special mystical friend. I love that term, by the way. Have you come across, so here's the question, have you come across these weird connections before? If so, is it usually just about balancing the energy between the two and anchoring the light in this world? Or have you seen such a connection manifest into something concrete in the world? I love this. So, wow, love has such mysterious ways, doesn't it? In Sanskrit, you've probably heard this before, there are 96 ways to describe love. And in ancient Persian, there are 80. And in English, what we're using here, there's one word that we have for it, love, one. So we are incredibly limited in our capacity to describe and go into all of these diverse experiences of what these connections, these heart-to-heart connections, these love connections might be, when they don't fit a standard mold of what we've been conditioned to think love ought to look like. So for this person, all I can really say is what your special relationship is to this other person in this lifetime is up to you to explore. I'd also say be aware of anyone who tells you definitively that this relationship is this or that, and to use your own intuitive judgment. This is your experience. This is your shared, potentially shared experience after all. So I'd say just feel into it for yourself. Maybe you decide this is a solo journey that you continue to feel into and open up to and journey with. Or perhaps this is something that you will open with the other person, tell them about it, have conversations and see where those conversations lead. Is it something that the other person is experiencing it too? Verify that for yourself with the other person. That will give you more information about what the nature of this special connection is and where you might want to go with that, if anywhere. Um, I'd also say, don't get too caught up in the correct terminology around this. Again, our language is limited in English, so call it what feels right to you. And also remember that you have the power to choose how involved you want to get into this connection and how deep you want to take it down the rabbit hole. So things can get a bit funny when we enter these psychic spaces of relationship without validating it and verifying it, kind of spoken and with the actual person. So you want to set clear boundaries if this is the case, and you also want to be quite respectful of the other person's boundaries. There's nothing, it's an awful thing when someone kind of comes into your own space, right, without being invited in. It's quite rude to do that, frankly. So be respectful of other people and one another's psychic space. Next question. Is older sibling privilege a savior or a curse? And this person elaborates, I'm speculating that usually older siblings naturally grow empowered in modern society, and younger siblings, due to less physicality and consciousness, might be more easily influenced by older siblings, either innocently or manipulatively, physically, mentally, or emotionally. Big question. And look, I would just say this is a very philosophical question, and one that completely depends on personal perspective and experience. It's really not possible to paint all sibling relationships with a broad brush stroke, because they're all so different. And each of them have their own dynamics within the family, their own culture, context, personalities, and their own family history. And if we go back to that earlier question, potentially even their own soul contracts. So it's really hard to say what's going on within each scenario and, to have such clear-cut roles. So in my view, this question is really much an each to their own kind of conversation. All right, hope you're doing well. As we go through this, again, if you've just joined, welcome. Thanks for being here together. Let me know where you're tuning in from and add your thoughts in the comments for those of you that are here live. I'd love to go. I'm going to go back and read through later. I'm going to stick with the questions for now, and then I'll go back and check on those and get back to you there. So next theme area was around kundalini, chakras, and the psychic realm. So here's a lovely one. Through a kundalini awakening, there have been major changes for this person. The most concerning is my cognitive function. I can hardly concentrate. I get very easily overwhelmed by other people's energy and world events. What on earth has happened to my poor brain? And will my brain get back to a level of functioning that allows me to concentrate again? Or is this usually a permanent change? What a fabulous question. So the short answer here is it's hard to say if the same level of cognitive function will return. I know I've spoken with people who have experienced what they call a complete rewiring of their brain, and they know that it will not return to how it was before. Then I've spoken to others who have talked about an upgrade, a mind upgrade, where they have vastly improved brain function. So their thoughts are sharper, clearer, and more expanded. Generally speaking, in the immediate aftermath of something quite strong, like a kundalini awakening, activation, or a very powerful energy experience, we can be temporarily frazzled and disoriented. This we know happens. And here, there's a very small conscious part of our mind that's able to focus on the everyday, and it can be severely challenged when we're tapping into vastly greater consciousness. So this is why it becomes really hard in the aftermath to concentrate, and we can easily become overwhelmed. Also, through such a charge through the body, our sensitivities are heightened, so we're feeling more as well, we're attuned to more. It's like all of the knobs on the radio have been turned up all of a sudden, and so there's just more information coming in. Naturally, that can be overwhelming. There's a theory here that might be useful to those people interested in this question, and I love this when I came across it. It's called the entropic brain theory. And the idea here is that our minds work on a spectrum of entropy. And entropy means gradually moving from order to disorder. So on one end of the spectrum is order, or what we call low disorder. And on the other end is the high disorder. And our normal waking state there's a sweet spot kind of around here, more on the ordered side of things. Where our mind functions and pays attention to things in the normal waking state. It's a bit more rigid. But when we have spiritual experiences and certain other transcendent moments, we access parts of the mind that are more disordered. So things like dream states, psychedelic states, near-death experiences, creativity fits into this realm as well. When we get into that more entropic state, less order, it can start to feel kind of crazy when that little sweet spot of the mind that's used to being here, that point of consciousness, starts to enter here. It can start to feel a bit, whoa, what's going on? Because it's simply not used to it. So this is why people ask the question often when they have such experiences, am I going nuts? What is this? Am I going crazy? The good news is this is usually a temporary experience, because consciousness likes to maintain some level of homeostasis. It likes to come back into its own balance and patterning. The thing is, though, once we've had these experiences, once we've tasted what is possible, and we know through our own lived experience that something else is actually possible, you can't forget that stuff. We are forever changed by them. And of course, depending on whether that was a pleasant experience or not, we might want to try and recapture that moment. But certainly we can learn with our consciousness, that sweet spot of consciousness, we can train ourselves and learn over time to access different areas of our conscious self. So not a clear answer there for you exactly, but I hope that that's at least given a little bit more to consider there. Next one, do you have any remedies or practices for a stuck throat chakra? Look, it depends on if it is stuck because of inactivity or overactivity. So if it's inactive, blocked up, nothing much happening there, feel like you can't speak and voice is clammy, then go express yourself. Get singing, speak, hum, use this beautiful vocal instrument that we have, play with sound and vibration, find ways to loosen up the vocal cords. And most importantly, if there's something really important that you want to say, get it out of your system. That doesn't always mean you have to go say it to the person you want to say it to, though that might be very effective if it's done in the right timing and in the right way, and not from a highly emotive state. But write it down if you need. This chakra is about expressing our truth. And so just moving something that we have inside us from inside our body that feels it needs to be expressed onto some format, whether it's spoken, whether it's, even through artwork, whether it is written, get it out of the system. Naturally, if we're going to say it to another, then we do that as respectfully as possible. And for a bit of fun, the traditional color associated with the throat chakra is blue. So invite more shades of blue into your life, play with it. If the throat is overactive, then here you can sink into the sweetness of silence. Listen more rather than speak, or speak less. Listen first, speak after. And find ways that your throat area will be soothed. I mean, blue is such a soothing, healing color anyway. So again, play with that. And the throat chakra also has a really lovely relationship with the sacral chakra. So that's the one which is the seat of our sexuality and our creativity. It's a very feminine energy. So here, making love, especially with the sounds, wink, wink, swaying your hips, loosening up the pelvis, spending time in water, creative play, dancing, all of this in the sacral area can also help release and smoothen out the throat area too. And of course, because we're a holistic system, all of our chakras work in synergy with one another. So if you want, another way is to call upon the strengths that you have already present in the other chakras, and to call upon their assistance to, clear your system and to bring it into regulation and clear anything that feels blocked. So focusing on the whole picture and everything running smoothly together can be helpful too. Last question in this area about the psychic realm. Do you have working channels that you check in with? This was a personal question for me. It depends how you define working channels. So if you're talking about different spirit entities, for me, it's connecting with my ancestors and with nature. This is something I've done since I can't even remember when. It just seems a natural part of how I operate. I don't have any other regular working channels that I'm conscious of. I don't have my team that I go to, or any particular entities, whether they be of whatever angelic realms or other realms, or this realm, again, other than my own ancestors and nature. I have, however, had some conversations with presences in the past that were pretty mind-blowing. And there were some pretty intense spiritual experiences, but those seem one-off. At this one time where, at least I thought at the time, I was speaking once with Jesus and once with Buddha, and I had this moment where I just got to ask them everything that I ever wanted to and needed to ask, and that was absolutely incredible. I don't remember what I asked, and I don't remember what they said, but that experience happened, I guess, at the time that it needed to happen. In terms of energy channels, personally, I find golden light really, really helpful. And to describe that golden light, if you got a glass of water and golden paint and you kind of swivel it around and then it gets all golden tinkly like that, that's how I experience that golden light. And I use this a lot. I don't know where I picked it up from. I don't know how it came about, but I've found it's one thing that's been very consistent with me because it works for me. Not recommending that necessarily for anyone else, but again, you got to try things on for you and see what works for you. So when I use this, I practice it in a way where I connect like a rod of this light almost from the sun to the center of the earth, and then traveling all the way through my system. And it goes through the head, the heart, and the hara, which is like the belly seat. And I feel it activating in those 3 points in particular. And I use that just to clear the way. I expand it out into my auric field and further if I feel the need to in whatever moment is going on. So that's me. I'd love to hear about yours and what works for you. Next one, personal and spiritual development. So there's a question that came in on transcendence versus transformation. The path of transformation seems to embrace both prosperity and sensuality, as well as spirituality, whereas the path of transcendence is a more exclusively spiritual path. Which is better or right path, or are they equal and just different? If you know me, you know my answer, folks. I'm an equal and just different kind of girl. I don't believe that there's any such thing as a better or a right path. There's no one size fits all model. My belief and experience is that there are just different paths. Each has their own nuances, each has their own gifts, each has their own challenges, and that it is up to each one of us to journey and find for ourselves what is most resonant with you. We are each these incredible resonant beings. And to tap into the core of who we are, we have to actively explore that resonance. And one of the ways that we do that is by bouncing off and entering into relationship with different people, with different pathways, with different bodies of knowledge. So life is this big grand adventure of experimentation. So nothing wrong with that at all. They're all simply tools and insights to help each of us on our way. This I thought was a great question. Am I behaved badly because I go to the pub, microdose recreational drugs, smoke cannabis daily, and engage in sexual activity with another, and use crystals in the process, all in the midst of a so-called pandemic? Look, we're all human. And I think what is outlined here is totally part of the adventure of being human. These are all experiences. This pandemic is such a crazy time right now, and everyone is finding their own ways of being with, dealing with, and navigating through the fear, the anxiety, the grief, the loss, the hysteria, the stress, the loneliness. You know, there are so many things that are brewing and bubbling up in this time. And we are humans moving through it. So I would throw that back and say, you know, the question for you, I would say, is, are these things, do you feel they're in your best interest? Are they helping or hindering you at this point in time? And is this what you want to be doing with your time on the planet right now? Only you can decide this for you. Next question. What did you say to yourself to get past fear so you could do something you thought was important? Yeah, for me, it's about focusing on the why, the big why. Focusing on the bigger picture and the result of completing that thing is really important. It keeps us out of our own stuff that we stew in with ourselves, because our mind is on something much larger. So keep your eye on the prize. It's perfectly okay to feel the fear and to walk with it. You know, I'm not one to say push it away, get rid of it, eradicate it. I think that can often make things worse. If you've worked with me, you know that I'm one to, you know, we become friends with emotions like this. We understand the wisdom behind it. We learn to walk with it and walk in partnership with it until it transmutes itself, which it always does when we honor it and acknowledge it. So as we start to do this more and more, if there's something that's really important to you that you want to do, but you feel paralyzed by fear, as you step over that initial fear, as you even step with and through it, the more you start doing that, the more you get used to it. The fear actually diminishes over time, and that first initial step we can grow it into a monster that is so much bigger than it actually is. And in time, it may even become our friend. You know, a common example of this is in this day and age is people on video and going onto video, and this fear that stops people from just jumping on. And then once they do and they start, they discover actually it can be a whole heap of fun and really wonderful. So sometimes we have to just do it. Just step into it, feel the fear and do it anyway, as they say. Step into it, and you will see as you do so that what we have been so afraid of, our relationship to it changes. What do I say to myself in these situations? I say, Nicole, you've got this. You were made to do this. There's always a way, and people do this every day, and I can too. Next question. Why are so many people curious about when one had an awakening? Is this the spiritual ego? So personally, I like asking people when they've had their experiences, because for me, this paints a bigger picture and a context in a timeline of when things happen. So I coach people in terms of their experiences, pulling the wisdom out of them and then applying that in wholesome ways into their life. So for our kind of conversations, it's quite important to understand what happened and when did it happen, so that we can understand then, you know, the nature of it, and it helps distill the wisdom. The second part of that question was, is this the spiritual ego? So look, if we're going to talk about the spiritual ego, we should define what that is. My understanding of it is that it's a new age term, and it's referring to spiritual narcissism or inflation. So it's things like believing my truth is the only truth, everyone else is wrong, or believing that I'm the chosen one and I'm the only person that is going to be able to fulfill a particular task. So in relation to this question, well, and okay, about the spiritual ego, I also think it can get activated when there's a sense that one is superior over another person for whatever reason. So when we look at the question, back to that question of, is it the spiritual ego that's driving someone to talk about when they had their awakening? I would say only if it's done in a way where that person portrays themselves as somehow better or more superior than another because of when that experience happened. But if it's simply to help inform and paint a better picture of when you know, of someone's story and how it unfolded, then no. When do I action and when do I apply the law of least effort? I love this question too. So it depends on the situation and the outcome that you would like. You need to assess what the best course of action will be and the outcome if you take action or if you apply the law of least effort, which I call the path of least resistance. So sometimes it's really simple. Yeah. For example, if I want to get fit, if I want to, you know, build up more muscle or lose weight or do whatever it is and feel more, you know, vibrant, I have to get up off my bum and I have to take action and go out there and do something about it. There is no amount of positive affirming sitting on my ass doing nothing aside from wishful thinking that is going to change that for me. I must take action. So that's a really simple case of when taking the action is the necessary course of action if you want to achieve those results that you're looking for. But say, and this is a bit different, when I'm faced with a really big decision. So I feel like I'm at a crossroads in my life. This is a really good time to check in and ask myself, is it best to take action or to apply this law of least effort, the path of least resistance? Now, as I ask myself those questions and as I future project, what do each of those look like? How do I feel as I'm engaging in each one of those? How resonant is each one of those pathways with who I know myself to be, the type of life that I am intending for myself and creating for myself? How aligned is that with what I truly want? That can help me make a better decision now in terms of which of those paths is the right way to choose. And look, there's no end point to this. We can always start down one path and course correct and change and try something else along the way. So there's, you know, don't get caught either in, which one? Is it going to be that one or that one? What if I make the wrong decision? Take a step or choose not to take the step, right? And then feel into that and then move from there. Okay, next topic. You know, this is one of my favorites, near-death experiences. So someone here says, I've had a lifelong fascination with NDEs, and I think I probably had one when I was being born. I don't recall it, but everything about NDEs makes so much sense to me. How do I go about getting more in contact with that memory? Great question. I've heard it several times. So here I often refer to the work of PMH Atwater. She's one of the grandmothers in the field, and one of her areas of passion and speciality is childhood near-death experiences. I suspect going into some of her work will answer some of those questions, and there'll probably be pointers there in what you can do to get more in touch with those memories. You might also like to try something that's called holotropic breath work. So this is a practice that can take you back using the breath, using, you know, very powerful evocative music and relaxation techniques. It can take you back to the time of birth, and particularly any traumas that were associated with it. I've heard of some just profound experiences that have come out of this. It came out of the work of the Groffs many years ago when they were working with psychedelics, and then psychedelics got banned. They weren't able to use that, but they found that this was a powerful way through the breath work to still be able to access that. So if that resonates with you and you want to check out and try out holotropic breath work, just make sure you look carefully in terms of who your practitioner is, feel into, you know, whether you feel naturally connected with them. Do you feel safe within their space? Because once you get into the process, there's a surrendering that is involved there. So you want to feel safe and held well when you're in these kinds of spaces. Another possibility is working with someone who does regressions. So you might have to search around quite a bit for someone who does regressions in this life as opposed to the past life regressions, but that could be useful too. So I guess forms of hypnosis. Another suggestion would be to simply have the intention to connect with any memories that might be there. Our bodies are infinitely wise storehouses, and they store everything on some level. So they're there if we want to access them. So have the intention to connect, receive with, and be open to any birth memories that want to come forth in the time that you're ready. And then allow them to come forth in moments where you're feeling very open and relaxed and receptive. So that might be walking in nature, meditating, swimming, in the dream state. You know, these are not the type of things that you want to come up in a situation that is quite awkward or stressful. You know, so relaxed. Create space and time in your life for it if this is an exploration that you're going to open to. And of course, these suggestions are by no means exhaustive. I'm sure there's many other things out there. If you, my beautiful community, have suggestions to add to that list, especially things that have worked for you, put them here in the comments and share with each other. So this is just what came to mind for me as possible pathways of exploration. And you, the experiencer, trust your intuition if a certain path of exploration feels right to you or not. Always trust yourself on this. Okay, where are the studies of near-death experiences of suiciders who suicided because of a profound spiritual experience, a non-ordinary transcendent experience? So this is a bit of a complex question. We're talking about people who have had a spiritual experience. Probably, I'm assuming from this question, it was one that was quite distressing, or it could have been one that was absolutely beatific and beautiful, and they just can't replicate that on planet Earth, and so they feel like leaving the Earth is another way of getting back there. And so folks that are in that category, where are the studies of people who have then had the experience and then attempted suicide but didn't die? They had a near-death experience. Why is there no scholarly literature in this area, and what can we do to change that? Look, it's always great to have studies, I agree. But having said that, that particular segment might be quite a small population. It's quite a niche down population within the near-death experience community. You've got the NDEers, then you've got those that NDE'd because of suicide, and then you've got within those, the reason for the suicide was because of those previous spiritual experiences. So super small population there. Not to say they don't exist, I'm sure they do, otherwise questions like this wouldn't arise. So what we could do is, of course, expand that out. And then, of course, if we look at larger groups, some of those questions might be answered. So personally, I suspect that because death and suicide are such taboo areas, that's why there's a lack of investigation in this area. There are stories out there about people who have had NDEs through suicide attempts, but I know that they're few and far between. And I know people who that is their experience, and they also are reluctant to talk about it because of the, just the taboo nature of these conversations again. And even within, the NDE community is guilty of this somewhat too. It's much easier to talk about the love and the light and the bliss experiences than it is to talk about the dark and distressing and challenging ones. Suicide is not an easy conversation, particularly for those who have lived that experience. Having said that, though, we need to talk about it. And the only way we're going to do that is by talking about it. Sharing those stories, again, engaging in some studies if possible around these areas. I think it's all going to be helpful. So for the lovely person that asked this question, you know who you are. How do we change that? Maybe you're the person to change that. Get going, collect the stories. For those who this is your experience, share the stories if you feel ready to. Do it in safe ways. And let's get on and do some of these studies so that we can help each other navigate life and beyond. Whew, all right, I think we're probably halfway through, my goodness. So next, spirituality and activism. Is it okay to be involved in activism, political or protest rallies, signing petitions? And why are we accused by other spiritual people of being in some kind of disresonance if we don't get involved? Yeah, great question. So where spirituality meets activism is such fertile ground. I love this space personally as being part of my own journey. So I love these conversations here. I completely agree that sitting on our butts is useless, particularly if we're called, propelled into taking action or being involved in a cause. I myself am one of those introverted action takers. So it takes a lot for my line to be crossed. I'm a very open and tolerant person in many ways, at least I'd like to think so. But when a certain line is crossed, it gets me at that deep point, I often need to then do something about that, step into action, say something about it, put my body into a space where that action says something about it, because that is a means of expression. So I don't think there's anything wrong at all with being an activist, attending rallies and signing petitions, because I do it as well. And I have done it. And to me, this is all part of expressing one's voice on things that I feel is important, being an active citizen on this planet and in my society. And I also see activism as a very powerful path to express our full self and to strive to better the collective. And of course, if this is not your way, it's not your means of expression, that is absolutely okay too. Again, there is no one size fits all is right model here. And for those people who are interested in the meeting place of spirituality and activism, you probably love the work of Andrew Harvey. He has a term for this, which he calls sacred activism. And he has a beautiful story of how that term came to him, and these two sacred fires of, the fire of spirit and the fire of activism, and where they merged and came together, and this big aha that happened in a big spiritual experience for him. So he has a website on all of that, resources, but here's the definition that Andrew Harvey provides. Sacred activism is a transforming force of compassion in action that is born of a fusion of deep spiritual knowledge, courage, love, and passion, with wise, radical action in the world. The large-scale practice of sacred activism can become an essential force for preserving and healing the planet and its inhabitants. A spirituality that is only private and self-absorbed, one devoid of any authentic political and social consciousness, does little to halt the suicidal juggernaut of history. On the other hand, an activism that is not purified by profound spiritual and psychological self-awareness and rooted in divine truth, wisdom, and compassion will only perpetuate the problem it is trying to solve, however righteous in its intentions. And personally speaking, brackets here, total burnout. When, however, this is still Andrew Harvey talking, when, however, the deepest and most grounded spiritual vision is married to a practical and pragmatic drive to transform all existing political, economic, and social institutions, then a holy force, the power of wisdom and love in action, is born. This force I define as sacred activism. End quote. So look, maybe this is your path and maybe it is not. You choose. For me, being burnt out by activism early on, almost coming to the point of losing my hair, but still caring deeply about so many issues and wanting to take action, personally, I've found sacred activism as a container to be a really wonderful path. All right, here we go. I think this is the last topic here. Yes, Earth, global consciousness. Thanks for hanging in there with me, you beautiful people. I hope you're getting something out of these questions as well and the answers. And again, if you've joined us since, in the meantime, pop your thoughts into the comments. I'd love to hear your contributions on these questions as well. What does global consciousness really mean? Personally, I think of global consciousness as a collective mind. So I love the metaphor of a beehive. Here, bees work together. There's so many working pieces to them, but there's a collective intelligence that is in harmony and resonance with itself. A global consciousness is, for me, a much bigger planetary version of that hive. Having said that, we humans, of course, we current humans, are far less harmonic than bees in a single hive. So call me an eternal believer, an optimist, but I believe we have the power to come closer to that more resonant collective, just like those beautiful bees. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me doing what I do. As I understand it, global consciousness includes the consciousness of all beings that live on this planet, including the planet itself. Some would say herself. One great and yet diversified mind, just like nature, very diversified and yet works in harmony with itself, and that we each have the power and choice to connect with. Spiritually speaking, what is Earth, and does it have a spiritual essence? So here, the Gaia, G-A-I-A, the Gaia hypothesis is really helpful. So the Gaia hypothesis is the idea that Earth and all that live upon it are, they're holistic and a self-regulating interdependent system in body, in mind, in spirit. Earth is a living entity. And so from this perspective, yes, it has a spiritual essence too. Does Earth have a spiritual purpose? And if yes, what is it? Are the spiritual purposes of humans and Earth entwined? It depends who you speak to. Some will say yes with great conviction, and some will say no, and there will also be ambivalence. I think at this point, it's essential, once again, I'm sounding repetitive, but it's essential to tap into your own lived experience, your own wisdom, your own intuition, and to ask from that place and to listen from that place when you hear the opinions and experiences of others. Some people are going to give you grand narratives about Earth's place in the cosmos, great galactic battles of good and evil. And, you know, this question that's being asked here, this has been with us for a very long time. If you explore the narratives that are out there, you look at our wisdom traditions, they're all trying to answer in some way something similar to this. So again, use your discernment to decipher what feels true to you from the fanciful fluff that also exists. My own opinion on this is that we are inhabitants of this incredibly beautiful planet. And I think that what we humans do and how we behave has a direct impact on the well-being and the future of the planet. And in this sense, we are deeply entwined here and now and into the future. We are of this earth, yeah? So I can't see us not being intimately interconnected. So it makes sense to me, makes logical sense to me that any fate, any destiny of the planet and us as her inhabitants, its inhabitants, are, you know, one and the same. Does Earth have overseers? If so, who and what do they do? Again, it depends on who you speak to. So go out there and explore what exists. What might Earth's destiny be? Is there a God's plan for Earth? Look, who am I to say? Again, this is the type of question I think best answered through personal knowing, intuition, and a whole heap of discernment. What I can share with you from my own experience is a vision I had of 4 different Earths. I've shared this elsewhere, but for those that haven't heard, I'll share it again. I was doing a weekend retreat out in nature. It was chakra dance. So it was a very powerful process of dancing through our energy centers. And when I came to this third eye space, I just had some kind of moments. And one of the visions that I saw when I felt quite out of body, actually, I you know, experienced myself to be in the stars, in the cosmos, and my physical body felt really disoriented. So I kind of huddled in a ball, but my mind was projected out into space. And I saw this image of 4 Earths, 1, 2, 3, 4, and one was a white light Earth. One was a beautiful, pristine jewel of earth and untouched, you know, nature in her deepest glory kind of earth. One was Earth where we are now. That was what I understood at that time. And it was Earth, but it was blanketed in this yellow haze, fog, pollution. It was sick. And then there was one that was, it almost looked red like Mars. But I understood that to be, you know, another version of Earth. And in that experience, I could see white light coming down from the white Earth planet to the current sick planet. And I understood that if we want the help and assistance to heal this planet and restore it back to its natural, wholesome, healthy self, we have the power to do that, but we have to ask and we have to work upon it. Otherwise, you know, Mars. So that was a vision I had that informs me. It was very powerful. It still stays with me to this day. So this is part of my truth. But again, I'm not here to say this is the truth, nor should you necessarily believe that. Use your discernment, see what's true for you. Final question, we made it. Do you feel China is critical in shifting our planet into the new paradigm? China is the world's manufacturing muscle, the home of Taoism, etc., etc. Look, I have no idea, perhaps. There's so much power and wisdom that is seated through the collective, that is the collective culture, history that is China. We humans as a planet have gained so much from the deep understanding and explorations that have been done in Chinese medicine, Taoism, etc. So I don't know. The question though, this particular question assumes that there is a new paradigm. Again, maybe, maybe not. Say that there is. And if so, look, well, we're all players on this planet. And there are some energies, collective energies, that are stronger than others. In this case, we're talking about nation states. And each of those has their own agenda and their role to play in the bigger narrative drama that is playing out on this planet at this time. So on this interconnected planet, we each affect each other. And I really think that only time will truly reveal how things are going to play out. So there it is, folks. A's to your Q's. I had so much fun with this. I hope you have got something out of it as well. Maybe it's something that we can continue on a regular basis. That'll be up to you if you shoot more Q's through. Much love to all. I'm so excited to hear your thoughts on these things, and be well, be radiant, be your beautiful selves wherever you are in the world. Shine on, my friends.